So over the last 5 weeks, this client of ours has closed 11 projects, roofing projects, with the average ticket job value of $18,177, with a total revenue of $199,949. We've been able to cut that down to about 5 minutes, and we do that through technology. Hello, Site Chatters. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a case study for an existing client that we're working with, a roofing company. Doing this because I want to give you guys some hope. I'm going to break down a couple of different key concepts within this conversation that I hope you can relate to. And the whole purpose of this is essentially to try and open your eyes to some perspective. The reason we do this, obviously, I have this conversation all day, every day with, trade business owners from all over the world. And, one of the key takeaways, I suppose, is the fact that sometimes when we're caught up in the running of our business, the biggest enemy of great is good. Like something's working and we can see that it's working and we think, well, why would we try and fix this or try and improve this? And so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to run you through the framework that we actually deploy for our clients over at Tradie Web Guys, just to give you an idea. And if there's something here that jumps out, great. Like if what you're doing over there is not any different to this, then that's fine as well. But these are the things that we're seeing really moving the needle. And I'm going to unpack some of those things quite deeply, just to give you guys a bit of a concept of what that actually looks like, because the results off the back of this process are absolutely phenomenal. So the client that I'm talking about is a roofing company. I'm going to run through some quick numbers as well with you. Essentially, when they came to us, they were pretty much word of mouth and referral only, relatively common. They were running a few ads, but they weren't really doing it with much success. So, for the last couple of years, we've really been able to dial up their lead volume and their inquiries and stuff like that, which has been amazing for them. What that actually meant, though, was because they didn't have that consistency with their inbound inquiries and as a result booked in jobs, they were doing a lot of subcontracting, which they didn't really want to do, but they kind of had to keep the guys busy, and they sort of were stuck into that bucket. So they were never really like in control, if you want to call it that, of the of their own work. They were sort of always dictated by another company per se. They had a small team, and the reason they had a small team was because they couldn't predict their revenue with consistency, so they couldn't hire. And, it's a really common scenario where, if you don't, it's very hard for you to make, hire a new team and recruit when you don't know if you can afford them in 4 months' time. And so essentially, like, this is kind of the ethos of what we do over at Tradie Web Guys is we're building sustainable and scalable, sales and marketing systems for business so they can strive towards their strategic objectives. And I'm going to run through some of these stepping stones with you today, as I mentioned. So here are some of the stats over the last 5 weeks for this client. And I'll unpack some of these quite deeply, but I just want to give you some, like I said earlier, a bit of hope, if nothing else. Because if you're in that sort of scenario where you feel like your wheels are spinning and you're finding it extremely hard to scale, there is a way to improve this. And we're seeing this happen across the board very, very successfully within the verticals that we've been operating. So over the last 5 weeks, this client of ours has closed 11 projects, roofing projects, with the average ticket job value of $18,177, with a total revenue of $199,949.89. Man, that is just punishing to know that he is $50 off $200K for that period. But anyway. Now, okay, so what I want to break down now is, what that actually looks like. So we generate a lot of leads for this client, and on average, we, on behalf of the client, so we have people that we put into the business called sales executives, and this becomes very important, and I'm going to dive into this further, where we were making about 80 calls a week for this client. Now, some of those are new leads, and some of those are leads that are existing within the client's sales process. Either way, there's a lot of phone calls that need to happen there. And the reason I bring this up is because in most cases, truthfully, 99.999% of the times when we start working with new customers, the normal sales process is we get a lead in, we call them, and if they don't answer, then we just write them off and wait for the next one. And so there is a huge amount of opportunity. In fact, within our system, we have learned aggregate data across different verticals, so it's not specifically accurate to roofing per se, but we know that the most discovery calls, which is the next stage after the leads are being generated, the most discovery calls actually happen after the 5th attempt of contacting that individual. So just give you guys a bit of hope there. If you're trying once and you're giving up, if you're trying twice, if you're trying thrice or even 4 times and you're giving up, just know this, you're one contact point away from actually having a decent conversation with that individual. So that's some interesting stats for you. Now, the thing that I wanted to, so like with all of those calls, the call volumes that are coming in there, it is super important that we are moving them through the various stages of the sales process. And that's another thing that we often see businesses tripping up on. They don't really have a defined sales process. When we deploy one for them, it's kind of like revolutionary, although it's not for us, but it's kind of revolutionary in the sense that, holy shit, now we can, like, the lifetime value of this lead is absolutely compounded. So keep that in mind. Now, this is what's happened, right? Over the last 5 weeks, the client's been able to deliver 60 quotes. So that's on average 12 quotes a week. Now, this isn't a huge company, by the way, either. There's seven guys working for this company. So the point, I suppose, is 60 quotes in 5 weeks, 5 quotes a week. And this is where it gets interesting as well. Before working with us, the quoting process would take on average around 5 to 7 days to get a quote out for a roofing job, sometimes more. We've been able to cut that down to about 5 minutes, and we do that through technology. So we deploy technology for this customer, which enables him to get in there and be able to generate a detailed quote while he's on site. And the reason that we do that is not because so much that we're speeding up the quoting process, but what it's actually doing is it's enabling the client to present the quote while he's there to the customer to seek approval. Now, I really want that to sink in for you, okay? And this is why I want you to, and this is why it's so important for you to understand this concept. If you guys are out there in the game of sending out quotes, you're just letting yourself be price shopped. Now, in some instances, and in a lot of instances, let it be truth be told, a lot of people may not be willing to accept right there and then. But I can 100% guarantee you this, if you don't ask, they never will. So being able to create quotes quickly and be able to present it to the customer while you're on site and then this is sort of blurring the line with sales process, which is another part of our program, which I'm not going to talk too much to right now. But the ability to be able to offer that and say, hey, do you want to proceed? Do you want to put a deposit down? Do you want to proceed with a design session or whatever the next stage of your sales process is? Like, that's a huge mover. And so we're seeing huge conversions off the back of that, and it's super powerful. So off those 60 quotes that, off those 12 quotes a week that got created, 11 of those jobs have got over the line. Now, I'll be honest with you, those numbers are not amazing, but it's a huge shift on what he's had. So now when I look at these numbers, when like when our account manager and the sales executives are looking at these numbers, they're conscious of the less obvious numbers, and those less obvious numbers are related to conversion, because we know through the different stages of the sales process, when I look at this and I go, you've put out 60 quotes and you've only had 11 accepted, I see that as a red flag, and there's room for opportunity to improve that part of the process, which is actually what we'll be doing right now. We're going to try and improve that part of the process, because at the end of the day, it's not about how many quotes you get out, but how many jobs you win. So in a perfect world, he's got 11 quotes out and 11 jobs accepted. Is that a reality? Probably not, to be fair. But like, the point is, don't put the KPI on how many quotes you send out. Put the KPI on how many jobs you close, and whatever along the way we can improve as part of that process to make that become a reality and improve that conversion number. That is a huge win. So of those 80 calls, per week, 60 quotes that have been out over the course of 5 weeks, which is roughly 12 a week. 11 of those have got over the line. And again, with a pipeline value there of a locked in pipeline value, I might add, of, 200K. This is a very, very transformative conversation for this business, and I imagine most businesses. So the reason why this system is so important and it's such an ongoing evolution is when we create the roadmaps for our customers, or we call it our impact roadmap. But basically what we do is we sit there and we go, okay, well, let's look at where you want to be over the next 12 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be. What are the milestones that we need to check off in order for you to reach this target? Now, that is such an important part of the process, because otherwise you're kind of shooting at nothing. You got to know what the goalposts look for. You got to look like. You got to know, what the North Star is. Otherwise, you're never going to hit it. Now, it's very refreshing when we set that goal and we set these milestones in place on route to that goal. When you can consistently see yourself striving towards these and hitting these targets, It's an amazing feeling. It really is. So what this actually meant now for the business and the owner is that they're regularly closing jobs. So this is kind of like a now snapshot, if you want, an after snapshot, before and after, whatever you want to call it. Like they're regularly closing jobs, which means they've got revenue. They've got consistent revenue coming in. It's not like 1 month they're making a lot of money and the next month they're not. Like it's a lot more consistent. So what that means is the business is now in a position where they can forecast their growth and they can do things like, okay, let's plan our next hire. Let's plan our next installation team. Let's increase like how are we going to make sure that we can hit the number that we've put on paper here, from a fulfillment point of view. What team do we have to put in place to be able to hit these targets, so on and so forth. The team's always growing now and they're always recruiting, and they have to be because once the system is moving and it's in place, like it's a very scalable. Essentially what we do is we just add more leads into the top of the bucket, the system's all working, and there's more output. So as part of the process, it's okay, well, at which point do we need to be hiring more team members and so on and so forth. The owner now is pretty much only doing site visits. And you can imagine if you're doing 12, all these different site visits and you're getting 12 quotes out a week, it's a lot of time driving around and doing these things. However, that is time very well spent. And this is one of the reasons why we like to put people into businesses. And like we also will use a combination of AI and technology and sales executives as humans in the business to represent the company. And they will do all the lead management. They'll do all the triage, and they'll do that deliberately because time best spent for our clients and for us is with them out there on the job doing site visits and closing the jobs. So again, it's just about maximizing where your time is being spent currently. The owner is now quoting from site in under 5 minutes. Now, before we were doing that, he was heading home in the afternoon and spending hours and hours in the office getting the quotes out diligently, I might add. He was very good with it. But the point is, like, now he's got his afternoons back and his evenings back. I mean, he literally can sit there with the customer, get the quote done correctly, present it to them, and then get an acceptance or approval right there and then, if that's what their client wants to do. So again, the reason I give you a bit of insight into this story is because I, without question, believe that what you guys are doing is amazing and you're very good at it. Sometimes there's little levers you can pull which are not obvious, which can make a huge difference. And I know I've been there myself when I was a plumber. I remember I've told this story a number of times on the podcast where, when I was an apprentice, I was working for a company. This sort of is a bit of an insight to how old I am. But, we would do the carbon copy where you write the invoices out and then you would tear a page off. You'd give one to the client, you give one to the office lady, and then you would hope to hell that at some point somebody paid you. And then I went and worked for another company and all of a sudden they had these, back then it was this huge bank machine that you would carry around. And I think it was like $300 a month that rented off the banks or something insane, but you could actually take a payment right there and then. And I was like, this is incredible. You mean you don't have to chase bills anymore? You can just take payment right there and then. And so again, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes the biggest enemy of great is good. So this is kind of like that. And we see this quite often with businesses where they're like, what we're doing is working and it's good. And sometimes we can just apply a few little, turn the screws in a few little areas and it can make an amazing difference. So if you relate to anything that you've heard there, or if any of that is of interest to you, please head across to tradiewebguys.com.au and reach out to us. We do this all day, every day. You have to be a trade business. I'll be honest, like we don't work with anyone that's not a trade business, but if you're listening to this podcast, that should be you anyway. We have some amazing case studies with some great clients on board, and we're very picky with who we work with. We don't just accept anyone. You've got to sort of tick a few boxes. We've learned that the hard way, I might add. However, I would love to have a chat with you. We'd love for you to book in for one of our impact roadmaps to sort of see what could potentially help you get to your next stage. And that alone is just such a valuable session. So anyway, if that was useful to you, great. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au. I hope that's just open your eyes up to a few potential ideas there on how you can move the needle. I look forward to chatting to you in an upcoming podcast. I'm Matt. Ciao. Hey guys and girls, how would you like all of the value adds left behind from our podcast guest all put together in the one spot. We've pulled every tool together, every template, every resource shared on the show, and we've packed them all into the Tradie Academy. It's free to join and it's built by the team behind the Site Shed and Tradie Web guys. Inside, you'll get marketing tips, business tools, and first access to future resources, all in one simple dashboard. Just head across to tradie.wiki/pod. That's tradie.wiki/pod. The link's in the episode description. And once again, you just log in once and then you're all set. And if you want to get notified of upcoming episodes, hit subscribe or follow.